2, check out the brakes of an old bicycle by finding a really steep hill. Whipping down the hill, then jumping off, running like crazy, holding on to the handlebars when the brakes don't work.
Agreed.
Who is the most likely to have a second helping of dessert? Jack's got a frozen shoulder. Unfreeze the shoulder. Who is the most likely to drive over the speed limit? Who is the most likely to increase their level of ballroom and Latin dance repertoire by trying pole dancing at the downtown fire hall? Okay, we'll pass it around after the shoe game. This is proof. You can also check it out on Georgie Stanley at youtube.com. You're amongst friends. Yes.
More YouTube.
Who is the most likely to buy soya products and low-fat cheese and try to pass it off as the real thing? Oh, Georgie got the frozen shoulder now. Who is the most likely to eat dessert for breakfast? Who is the most likely, as a child, to deliberately get airborne on their bicycle, aim for a bush at the bottom of a ravine, and make a perfect upright landing in the bush?
Wow.
Who is the most likely not to be afraid to try something new? Who is the most likely to overeat at Thanksgiving, Christmas, and any other festive occasion? Who is the most likely to forget where they parked the car? Who is the most likely to buy something, assemble it first, and then read the instructions? Who is the most likely to misplace their keys? Who is the most likely to go to a masquerade party dressed up as a provocative nun and have to fend off a monk trying to make a pass? Who is the most likely to misplace their glasses? Who is the most likely to walk around the house talking to themselves and answering? Oh, we know the answer to this, but it's still funny. Who as a teenager was the most likely to sneak off on a date, go out in the bush, get their car stuck in the mud, frantically frantically try to get the car out and get caught by their dad flying overhead in a helicopter. Who is the most likely to save millions of polystyrene boxes from work, build a raft complete with seats, umbrella, and bar, and attempt to float down the river in the yearly Princeton raft race? And now, that's the last question, but there's a little more to that story. You see, Jack had designed his craft with inner tubes on the sides so that if the raft became lodged in shallow water, the two men, there was his friend Dave Reed and himself, would push it down the river like a roadster, which they had to do in about 50 meters. It got stuck. So they started pushing it down, and the raft fell apart and floated away in pieces, with Jack and his deckhand, Dave, floating in the inner tubes behind these millions of polystyrene boxes. And the creative, non-competitive class of rafts became the most popular after that year. So, Georgie, we've got some advice here from Dave Reed. And although Dave Reed is vacationing in Jordan, and not here tonight, he wants me to pass on this advice because he knows you and Jack have been talking about going on a cruise someday. And Dave says, before you do, he advises you check out the ship. If there are any of these wheel-shaped lifesavers hanging on the side, he says to run, because Jack may have designed the ship and polystyrene just doesn't hold together. So plunk those prizes! And we'll start with table number 1 with the nice pole dancing. And you know that fireman, he's not too bad, eh?